BBC News with Neil Nunes. Indian officials say one of the two Indian soldiers killed along the border of the disputed region of Kashmir had been beheaded by Pakistani troops. They say both bodies had been mutilated. On Tuesday, India accused Pakistan of crossing the border to carry out the attack. Here's Andrew North.
Barbaric and inhuman are some of the words Indian officials are using to describe Pakistani forces after the Indian army said one of its soldiers had been found beheaded. It's accusing Pakistani troops of taking the head with them when they retreated after Indian soldiers failed to find it in a search. The story has swept away weeks of coverage of the Delhi rape case, with reports calling this the most serious violation by Pakistan yet of a 10-year-old ceasefire agreement. Pakistan has dismissed India's allegations, calling them propaganda to divert attention from what it says was an Indian cross-border raid over the weekend.
The Sri Lankan Foreign Ministry has told the BBC that a Sri Lankan domestic worker has been executed in Saudi Arabia. The maid, Rizana Nafiq, had been convicted of killing a baby in her care in 2005. Charles Haviland is in Colombo.
The maid, Rizana Nafiq, had denied killing the 4-month-old boy. Her family and supporters said she was a minor, only 17 years old, at the time of the alleged murder, which, if true, would put Saudi Arabia in breach of the International Convention on the Rights of the Child, which forbids capital punishment for child offenders. An MP campaigning for workers abroad, Ranjan Ramanayake, described the Saudi government as dictators who would never execute Europeans or Americans, only Asians and Africans.
Journalists at the Southern Weekly newspaper in China have agreed to end their protests against censorship. It's not clear whether censorship of editorial content by officials would stop. Here's Martin Patience.
This agreement was reportedly reached after journalists were told they wouldn't be punished for the protests. It's understood that the newspaper will now be published as normal this week. Staff at the Southern Weekly had been calling for the resignation of a propaganda chief after he censored their New Year's message to readers. The strike prompted a series of public rallies in support of the journalists. The protests were seen as an early test for China's leaders on whether they would tolerate greater freedom of expression.
Japan has announced another increase in military spending only 2 days after the new nationalist government said it would boost its defense budget for the first time in 10 years. The authorities in Tokyo have requested a further $2 billion, which is being linked directly to concerns in Japan about the growing military threat from China. Beijing is pursuing its claim to a group of disputed islands with growing vigor, but the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says he's determined to stop China. World News from the BBC. 14 political activists in Vietnam have been convicted of plotting to overthrow the communist state. All but one of the defendants were jailed, some for as many as 13 years. The activists include Roman Catholics, bloggers, and students. 11 of them have been charged with membership of Viet Thanh, a US-based political party which Vietnam calls a terrorist organization. State television in Iran says 48 Iranians held by Syrian rebels since August have been freed in exchange for prisoners held by the Syrian authorities. The Turkish humanitarian aid agency IHH said it secured the deal through mediation by Turkey and Qatar. Shaima Khalid reports.
The chairman of the Turkish aid agency, who is currently in Damascus to oversee the prisoner swap, said that under the deal, the Syrian government would release 2,130 prisoners, including Turkish nationals. The prisoner swap has not yet been confirmed by the Syrian government. The rebels, who captured the Iranian nationals in August, said they were from the Revolutionary Guard and were sent to help Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces. The Iranian government denied the allegations and said they were pilgrims visiting Shia Muslim shrines.
The head of an inquiry into reports of child abuse by Catholic priests in Germany has resigned, accusing the church of censorship. Professor Christian Pfeiffer had been appointed by German Catholic bishops to lead a team of criminologists and lawyers looking into the scandal. The bishops say the inquiry will be ended and a new one set up with a different leader. Cooler weather has helped efforts to contain hundreds of wildfires raging across much of Australia, but meteorologists warn the emergency is far from over and that the searing temperatures the country saw earlier this week are likely to return. Wildfires and high temperatures are common during the Australian summer, but this year the situation has been more extreme than ever before. BBC News.